a nutty thing the Trudeau Liberals just did, and it's no surprise, whenever they get into trouble, they go for their old standbys. They talk about abortion or gay rights or transgenderism. It's their way of changing the channel, so to speak, from bad news for them. They know how they can get the media party regulars to change the subject and flip things around for them. They need that a lot these days. Things are going pear-shaped, as the Brits would say. Inflation, taxes, crime, housing costs. It's really spiraling out of control. Did you see the latest poll from Abacus Data? I mentioned them, as you know, because they're run by a liberal. So when they say there's bad news for Trudeau, it's like when the New York Times says there's bad news for the Democrats. It's an admission against their own interests that they don't like to make. So you know you can believe it. I mean, look at this. Conservatives lead by 12%, as only 27% think the Prime Minister should run again? Huh. I mean, come on, look at this. The Liberals are literally in third place, every place west of Ontario. They're even behind in the Atlantic. When did you see that last? When was the last time the Conservatives had a 9-point lead amongst women voters? Look at young voters. They can spot a phony a mile away. They hate Trudeau. Yeah, so time to change the channel. Trudeau's favorite, Melanie Joly, got the ball rolling with this weird statement the other day. Remember this? Canada mulling game plan if U.S. takes far-right authoritarian shift. Joly. We are certainly working on scenarios, Joly said in French during an interview. How weird is that? Authoritarianism? You know what I mean, like declaring martial law, stomping on peaceful protesters with riot horses, seizing bank accounts of political opponents, and censoring the internet? That kind of thing? An authoritarian shift like that? But nothing that weird could be a mistake. Melanie Joly only reads what's written for her. So this was part of a planned new narrative. It's a plan, a media plan to run against Donald Trump and against Ron DeSantis. Think about it. If you're Justin Trudeau and you're running against Pierre Poilievre, you're sparring with a guy who talks about inflation and housing prices and crime in an effective way, a guy Canadians seem to be warming up to. What Liberal candidate wouldn't prefer to spar against a U.S. Republican, all of whom have been demonized in the Canadian media, none of whom have any Canadian sensibility, and none of whom will bother to fight back against Trudeau, and even if they did, he'd love it. So it's an unserious way to govern. It's an unserious way to deal with issues, but the Liberals obviously believe they can distract from their real problems in Canada by shadowboxing with Americans. They'll do it all day long, and look at how eager the media is to go along with them, which is why the Liberals did that weird thing I mentioned at the beginning of this long monologue. They declared that America is a dangerous place for gay people. Of course they didn't say gay. They said to SLGBTQI+. I know gay people, I know some trans people, and never in my life have I ever heard anyone real use the phrase to SLGBTQI+. It's like when Democrats invented the word Latinx to say Latino, or it's like cisgender. No one real talks that way. So naturally, Trudeau loves it.
To SLGBTQI+ workers within the federal government.
So they brought in this warning, hey, to SLGBTQI+ people, better not go to San Francisco or New York. It's too dangerous for you there. I'm sure they actually meant Florida and Texas and other Republican places. They don't single those states out, though, because, of course, it's complete BS. I can't think of a single gay right in Canada that they don't have in Texas and Florida. It's just a weird attempt, like I say, to shift the focus away from Trudeau's mess in Canada to the U.S. instead. The CBC is absolutely down with this agenda, of course. I listen to CBC radio once every month or two, so you don't have to. And they're obsessed with American news. They're obsessed with Trump, of course. It's really weird for a Canadian national broadcaster using Canadian tax dollars to give us hot takes on what's going on in another country as if we're not bombarded with American news all the time. And it's for the same reason, too. They'd rather talk about alleged corruption in America than alleged corruption in Canada. All this talk about Russian collusion, Russian influence in America, that, by the way, the Mueller inquiry said did not exist, that's a lot easier for the CBC to talk about than, say, Communist China's actual influence in actual Canada. That's hard for the CBC to talk about. So they made the announcement, and here's Chrystia Freeland talking about the announcement in her signature rambling style, condescending in tone and substance, totally evasive, and the reporters never press her on it. She really is like Kamala Harris. Here's Chrystia Freeland.
Why has your government issued the travel advisory for LGBTQ plus people to the United States? And was this something you discussed with President Biden, or your government discussed with President Biden first?
So, as someone who has had the real privilege of serving as Canada's foreign minister, I know that our travel advisories are done very professionally. We have professionals in the government whose job is to look carefully around the world and to monitor whether there are particular dangers to particular groups of Canadians. That's their job, and it's the right thing to do. When it comes to the United States specifically, I have personal experience of dealing with a diversity of U.S. administrations and of dealing with American leaders at all levels of government, in all branches of government, and with Americans who represent diverse groups across the country, whether it is business or labor or civic organizations. And that's because our government understands, as every Canadian government needs to understand, that one of the principal responsibilities of the federal government is to understand how to work with our U.S. neighbor. I think our government has shown that that's a priority for us, and that we work hard at it, and that we're able to manage that relationship regardless of the choices that the people of the United States make. Even as we work hard on that government-to-government relationship, every Canadian government, very much including our government, needs to put at the center of everything we do the interests and the safety of every single Canadian and of every single group of Canadians. That's what we're doing now. That's what we're always going to do.
So it was a clear question. Why did you do it, and did you talk to Joe Biden about it? And then she rambled on for more than 2 minutes saying literally nothing. But they all do this because they know the compliant, colonized regime media will either ignore her windy answer or quote it, but never say, you just gave us a word salad. Can you please answer the question? It's a simple yes or no. Did you talk to Joe Biden about this? Her answer really reminds me of Kamala Harris. Both Harris and Freeland are the number two in each of their country's governments. Both are obviously affirmative action hires. I mean, just ask Trudeau.
Your cabinet, you said, looks a lot like Canada. And I understand one of the priorities for you was to have a cabinet that was gender balanced. Why was that so important to you?
Because it's 2015.
Both Kamala Harris and Chrystia Freeland are extremely unlikable people. Both are extremely awkward and unaccomplished, which may be why each are where they are. Anyone who thinks of getting rid of Joe Biden or thinks of getting rid of Justin Trudeau immediately thinks, yikes, Kamala Harris would be worse.
The governor and I, and we were all doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Thank you for the warm welcome. So here's the thing. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about and most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right? And it's part of our experience growing up. It's part of, a nostalgia and a memory of.
We used to have a great Kamala Harris impersonator who made little parody videos for us. Some people actually thought it was Kamala Harris. She was so spot on.
Hello, America. You don't have to clap.
But he's clapping.
Okay. With the exploration of space having been defined in the 21st century, we know then what we know now, and what we know now is absolutely nothing.
She's really good at being really bad. Anyways, that's our deputy prime minister, really. No wonder we're in a mess. But here's the weird thing, and it's like when it's Pride Month or Pride Season, as Trudeau now calls it, and woke corporations turn their logos into rainbow colors. But they only do so in their North American and European outlets. Look at this, Mercedes, BMW, Cisco, all the big companies, they don't quite have the political courage to fly that pride flag in Riyadh or Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, or Islamabad, Pakistan, now do they? And that's how it is with Trudeau and Freeland. Where is their public denunciation of regimes that actually kill gay people? When was the last time you saw Trudeau or Freeland actually speak truth to power? You'll recall that Trudeau, who doesn't seem to do well with powerful women, just ask Jody Wilson-Raybould, you'll recall that he thought it was important enough to publicly shame the new Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, for being anti-gay, which of course she isn't anti-gay, but Trudeau likes mansplaining things to women.
We know that it's a time of tremendous anxiety for our citizens, whether it's the war in Ukraine, whether it's hangovers from the pandemic, whether it's the global economic challenges people are facing. People need reassurance, people need to be included. Obviously, Canada is concerned about some of the positionings that Italy is taking in terms of the LGBT rights, but I look forward to talking with you about that.
I'd like to see him do that to a country that actually kills gays.